Welcome back to the lab. I'm Daddy Clay. The show is brought to you by Baby Bjorn, and we have a very special show this week because we're joined here by Dr. Aaron Rocklin, Associate Professor of Psychology at the University of Texas. Thank you, Dr. Rocklin, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So let's talk about stay-at-home dads.
Sure.
Give us a little snapshot. I mean, things are changing, it seems, as a consequence of the changes in the economy in the world of stay-at-home dads. What kind of impact is that having?
Well, I think it's a particularly important time to look at this issue because what we found is even in the last 5 years there's been real significant growth in the number of stay-at-home fathers. But in the last few years, because of what's been going on in the economy, the layoffs have been particularly impactful for men. I believe it's that 80% of the layoffs in the last 2 years has impacted men, and obviously that's also impacting men's roles at homes for men who aren't finding jobs immediately. And so for these guys, they're having to kind of go through a really critical point in their lives in terms of negotiating what kind of home care responsibilities are going on. There are some situations where people are reacting to those dads with like, okay, what happened? You must have left your job, etc. But there's also a lot of admiration and even jealousy being expressed both by working men who would like to spend more time with their children and mothers who are like, wow, I'd love if my dad played or my husband played a more active role at home too.
In the households where the father is staying home, I guess, as a result of exigent circumstances, because he's been laid off. Does that change the dynamic in the household as opposed to if it's done sort of by mutual consent or it's sort of the decision made sort of without that?
Yeah, it's actually a timely question. We just finished up a study where that's what we're doing. We're looking at the reasons why men are going into the stay-at-home father role and how that's relating to adjustment, their psychological well-being, and even their marital satisfaction. And what you indicated there is right on target. So guys who are being forced into it, or couples who are making the decision purely because of economic reasons or job loss, etc., not surprisingly can be struggling more in the role, whereas men and families who are negotiating that decision based on their own parental beliefs or based on just the importance of a parent being at home are adjusting better. And the other thing that we found that I think is pretty interesting is men that are kind of holding on to very kind of traditional ideas about what men should do and career is related to their own identity are struggling some, whereas men who are kind of defining their own masculinity in more flexible terms are adjusting better to the role and less impacted by the stigma that's out there.
So other than just sort of practice makes perfect when it comes to being a stay-at-home dad, are there any strategies that you're observing in the stay-at-home dads that are successfully making this transition? I mean, is there a pattern in what guys are doing right to be happy in the role of stay-at-home dad?
Yeah, I would pretty much summarize that in terms of support and isolation. So that the men who are really getting good support for their roles, who are finding other stay-at-home fathers in their own communities, they have stay-at-home dads have a huge online presence, which I think is terribly important, and we've seen tremendous growth in terms of the online support groups on stay-at-home fathers and fathering in general. And then the tricky part about it, the men who are struggling are those that get kind of isolated. Parenting, as you know, especially full-time parenting, that can be one of the real significant challenges, is your world is kind of immersed within, childhood play often, and you kind of miss that adult interaction. And so the men who are not connecting with others or isolating themselves from other parents, from other men, or who are being isolated by stigmatizing responses for others are naturally struggling more.
Well, I wonder what it's going to take for sort of political action, for there to be or even action in the business community for the attitudes to be about parental leave instead of maternity leave. Actually, this is a good point for us to bring up the fact that you're going to be taking a little paternity leave, isn't it?
In the fall, we'll be expecting our second child, and my wife, who's a physician, makes far more money than I am. Thank you, University of Texas, for that. for that one. And I will be the primary caretaker at home, and the university has a very generous policy where I was able to, I did have to apply for modified instructional leave, but I will have a teaching release for the entire semester.
Well, thanks a lot for coming in. Really appreciate you
it.
talking to us about the state of stay-at-home dads here in this country. Thanks a lot to Baby Bjorn for allowing us to bring in really great experts and professionals to talk about being a dad here with you guys here in the lab.